For this example, I'm going to concentrate on a phone, iPhone 6-7 size, and is going to be a portrait format. So if I want to make any changes to this, if I need, let's say, a different color in the background, I can very quickly set that up. If I want to use an existing color that I used in a design, I can start by actually bringing in an element. So the way you bring in elements is by going to the File menu and choose Import. Instead of File Place, like in InDesign, here we are importing. Here are the colors that I want to use. And if I want these colors to be accessible easily, what I can do is to use the eyedropper and select that color. And once a color is selected, I can just use the plus sign to assign it or save it. So the same way I imported, I can also use Finder or any other applications to bring in images. If I want to bring in the icon, which I want here on the home page, I can just drag and drop it as well, so you don't have to always go through the import option. And once you place it in, you will see that resizing and positioning things are working very similarly to any other applications. You have your rulers and guides, smart guides to align them in place. And if you want to create things from scratch, you have tools like the rectangle and ellipse tool and pen tool with which you can start drawing here directly. Now you have the corner widgets like in Illustrator and InDesign. You can round down corners if you want to use a button or create a button. You can use the border option to turn it on and off. In this case, I'm just going to turn it off. And I'm going to pick the color that we already saved, this darker orange color for the button. We could have for the background a different color, but I think that's going to be fine the way it is. And I am going to have the text here on this button. So let me just put this up here. So we will add the text, type tool, and say see features or explore features. I'm going to type in. And the cool thing about working with Type in XD, I mean, it's very similar to the other applications, but there's a couple of advantages, like changing the size of it is just simply by dragging this point at the bottom up and down. That's already quite handy. Makes it easier to make changes to the size. Then, of course, if you want to change the font itself, you can do that from the right side. Again, I'm not going to go into detail on the settings that you have here on the right side because it's very similar to just any other applications in the Adobe Suite. I'm just going to use DIN 2014 and maybe use another style, maybe use the bold style from there. And I will set the color, again with the fill color option, to white. And I'm going to actually save white as a quick option from here. Okay, so hopefully I'm not too fast. I'm trying to cover as much ground as possible, but that's a quick and easy way to put together the home screen. The key about using XD, because we could do this in Illustrator, so what's the point in using XD for this? The reason why we are using XD is because we could add the interactions here. So if I want to have another artboard, I could just use the artboard tool from the side and I can click anywhere here. Now we have our second artboard and I can start adding elements in here. So for example, if we want to see on the second artboard the features, I can start bringing in these icons that I prepared. So I'm going to place in these icons. You can see I dragged and dropped 5 icons at the same time, and I can resize them and start placing them in there. But instead of putting all 5 of them, I'm going to show you another cool technique. So you can see you can bring in multiple elements, but I'm just going to use the first one. And I'm going to have a title next to it. So I can just alt-click and drag an existing text onto the other side. And I'm going to use a darker brown, which is part of the branding color. And I'm going to type in temperature, or yeah, let's just call it heating, because it's a smart home product that we are doing the app for. So that's the icons are standing for there. I can increase the size quickly, just to make it easier to click on. And here's already something that I recommend to do. Whenever you want to turn something a bit more complex into a button that you will want people to interact with, just create a blank rectangle. So use the rectangle tool and draw a rectangle over the whole area. So that's the active area you want people to click on. And then you can remove the border and the fill colors, but the rectangle is still there. So when I create the interactions, that is going to be like the bounding box they can click on. Okay, so you can actually now group all this together. Command G or Control G is for grouping. That way it will be easy to copy and create additional versions of this. But I'm just going to place this here on the top. So let's create the other features. And here comes a really cool thing. So instead of duplicating or click and dragging, there's this option called Repeat Grid. So if you click on that, you get a different outline. It's this green dashed line that represents that we have a slightly more smarter option that we can use, with which we can click and drag to quickly create duplicates. But not only that, we can also click in between and adjust the gap between them, or gutter, we can call it. Don't know whether gutter is a term we can use for app design. We use it in print, but I guess we can use it here as well. But yeah, so we have the spacing and the repeat option for these elements. Now, what happens if I want to change one of these? So if I double click, I can access parts of this repeat grid. And let's say our second one is electricity. Or yeah, let's just call it, yeah, electricity is fine. Electricity. So I actually feel like it's too big, the text. So I changed the content. I mean, the text itself, the copy is updated. But if I have that selected, I can go to the size, and you can see when I change it, it actually changes on all of them at the same time. Okay, so thanks to the repeat grid, there is a connection between these elements, and it will update on all of them. If I change the color, if I decide that I hate this brown color, and I instead wanted to use this orange, or maybe the blue, then again, the color will update, the size will update, so all the properties will update, but the actual text itself can be different, which is handy. Now, what happens if I want to change the image? Because obviously I want the other icons to show up here. So if I select my second icon, you see I can select it like that. I can go to Finder, and I can select the one that is electricity. So that's the one I think I wanted to use for it. If I drag and drop it into XD, like so, notice what happens is that the first one didn't update, but the fourth one updated. Because now it recognizes a pattern, so it repeats the first two. Not just the first one, it repeats the first two. But once I add the third one in, so once again, first, I recommend to always double-click and select the item you want to replace. Otherwise, it might not do it the way you wanted it. So the third one, let's say, will be the privacy. If I select that and drag and drop it in, now we have repeated elements, a 3-element pattern that we have there. So I can just rename this as well to privacy or security, probably. No, actually, privacy, let's go with this. Okay, and then once again, I select the fourth one, and I'm almost done. That will be the security with the shield, security, and select the fifth one, which is transport. So let's just drag that in as well. And these are icons that I prepared in Illustrator. So there's still a task for Illustrator and Photoshop, preparing either photographs or icons, whatever you are working with. And then once they are ready and the assets are there, you just have to import them into XD. But make sure you don't waste time in actually creating your screens in Illustrator, right? Because there's no need for that. If you prepare the elements, put together the actual composition for the screen in XD, don't waste time on doing it in Illustrator, because this will just simply replicate the task, okay? So you do the composition here, and you only do the assets in Illustrator. If it's just a button as simple as that, you can do that in XD. Anything else that's a bit more complex, like the icons, do that in Illustrator, okay? So that's the general workflow that you need to follow. So I will type in travel. So we have our feature screen, and useful to remember, name your artboards as well. There is a reason for that. It's like naming your layers. It's handy to have them named, because then if there's a team working on the same prototype, they will know exactly what each screen is meant to do. So this is going to be the features screen. All right. And that is going to be our start or front screen or home screen. I'll just type in home. So there's a shortcut, Control Tab. It's not Command Tab, it's Control Tab to switch between design and prototype mode. That's the two modules you have in XD. When you switch to prototype mode, notice that we only have the selection tool. There's nothing else. So you won't be able to make amends to your assets that you added, all the elements. You can only move them around, but you can't actually make changes. So if I select, let's say, the button, you see that there's no options coming up. I can't access the appearance, the color, and things like that. But what I can do is to assign an interaction. And that's what I have here. Notice that little icon there. All I have to do to say that I want that button to lead on to the next screen is to simply drag and drop it onto the next screen. I quite like how they've done this nice little swirly interaction. When I let go, it creates the interaction. So it knows that that button needs to lead onto this screen. And here on this screen, or on the interaction itself, you have a couple of options. First of all, it tells you what's the target, which is our second screen. And that's why naming it was important, because you can tell, okay, it goes to the right direction. Now, transition is interesting. You can decide how you want this transition to work. So if people click on it, do you want it to just fade out and show the other screen, or you want it to move? Movement is always good. And it's good to keep track of how you put down your artboards is probably how you want the interactions to be, because as a designer, you will know that, all right, so I want the screen to move to the right. Now, if I set this to slide right, slide left, you will see exactly what that does. It's just important to remember which one is which. What you need to think of is that the target is going to do this action. So the target screen will slide left. So when we look at the home screen, we press the button, this new screen will come from the right, sliding to the left. Okay, so it's sometimes you have to just think about, okay, what is actually making that move? It's always your target that makes that interaction or that transition. So slide left, but there's also push left. I'll show you exactly what the difference between them. Once I selected a transition, I can also select an easing for it. For now, I'm going to set it to none, just so you can see how it looks without it. And then you can set a duration, so how fast it moves. And also, there you can type in manual ones apart from the ones you can see there. But let's just keep it on the 0.4, so like half a second. Now, if I want to see this working, all I have to do is to either click here on the play button, desktop preview, command return is the shortcut for it. So it comes up with this little preview here. If you have your phone connected, just make sure you install Adobe XD app on it, and then you should be able to see it straight away syncing here. So you can actually do the interactions on your phone. You can see I have the Explore Features option, and it highlights it already as a thing I can click on. When I click on it, there you go. That was our slide left. So let me show this again. If I, here in the background, if I click on another icon, it doesn't automatically update, so you just have to press Control Enter again. Let's see again, slide left, that's how it looks. If I want to change this interaction, I can click on that arrow to bring up the transition options. Let's see what push left will do. Let's test this again. So instead of the new screen sliding over the previous one, this just simply pushes the whole thing to the left, as it says. So once again, push left, and then let's see the slide left once more. I know it's very basic, but honestly, I always get mixed up with this still. So it's good at reminding myself as well. So that's the slide left. It goes over the previous one. And just to see how the dissolve looks like, let's choose dissolve. That's the third option we have. If I click on Explore Features, it's just a simple fade in, fade out. Yeah? So that's the three types of transitions you have, and you can just change the directions of them. Let's just go for slide left. I think that was probably the coolest one. So slide left. Now, easing is cool as well. I would most of the time use ease in and out, which means that it slowly starts, then speeds up, and then slows down again. So you have like an S-curve in the animation curve. So if I do that, you won't see much difference if it's set to 0.4. But if it's a bit slower, let's say 1 second, you might see the difference there. Can you see that? So it slowly starts, then speeds up, and then slows down again. It's very nice and smooth. Most animation look good with a bit of easing. So the reason why this ease in and out works well in general in an interaction is because when you tap on something, you want to see an immediate reaction, right? That's why an easing is good, because it starts off immediately, but slowly. Instead of flashing immediately something up, you just see a subtle animation from the right, then it speeds up, and then it slows down again, preparing the user for letting them interact with it. So we have our transition from the main screen to the second screen, but I want to go back to the main screen as well, of course. So let me just bring in quickly an arrow that I prepared. SVGs, as you can see, are vector files, which obviously has transparency as well. But the best thing about them is that they can use on the web. So if you use them on websites, like including a PNG or JPEG, you can actually use a vector file on the browser. So it's a very important file format. If you haven't started using it, even if you don't do web projects, here in XD, the reason why they are so cool, because I could just create it in Illustrator, save it as a SVG file, and I could drag and drop it in, but still maintain it as a vector file, meaning I can easily update its color. So it's not an image, it's not pixelated, and it still has the option to turn it into whatever color I need, right? So it's very important to make sure that you use these SVG file formats. By the way, you can't drag and drop or import AI files or EPSs, all right? So if you want to have any vector file coming into XD, it has to be SVG. If you stick to a color, in this case, this orange color, which you will use for an interaction, anything that you want people to interact with, try to use the same color, because then immediately they will recognize that, okay, a button is orange, that usually need to be clicked on, then there's consistency. So once I have my button, I can switch back to prototype, select that button, and just simply drag that little arrow onto the other screen, and notice that it remembers my last used settings. So it remembers that I use slide left, ease in out 1 second. Well, to go back to the home page, I don't want the user to be impatient and wait for 1 second. So I just set it to 0.4, and I'm going to use slide right, because we want to go the other direction. And once again, the home screen, that is going to slide right. Always the targets transition that you select here. So if I test this out, I go to features, and then I go back. What I normally do, and I recommend everyone to use XD in this way, don't create hundreds of screens without actually adding interactions. So I rather start with just 2 screens and already start setting up interactions than going like having so many screens and then add the interactions, because once you add the interactions, you really recognize whether it's going to work the way you imagined or not. That's the whole point in prototyping. You're getting immediate feedback from your own testing, right? You can test it on your phone, test it on the desktop, and you want to create an app that is convenient to use. Do you think it's a good idea to have the arrow on the top left corner? It's familiar. In the desktop environment, when we are on the browser, we normally have things going back on the top left. But when you hold the phone in your hand, I think everyone has a phone with them. So if you just pick your phone, you don't have to turn it on, just hold it in your hand, either left-handed or right-handed. Hold it in one hand and try to reach to the top left corner with your thumb. Is that easy? Now, if you think that the going back is not important, then fine, you can leave it there, because then it's not in the way. And there's a reason why we have in apps at the bottom most of the important things, because those are the easiest to reach with the thumb. So the bottom tab is your best real estate on the screen. That's where you want the most important, most frequently used options to be, okay, on that tray on the bottom. Anything on the top is hard to access. So you only put things there that's rarely needed, but anything that's important should be at the bottom. And if this app is a very simple app, it's not complex, and it doesn't have anything else on that screen, then there's no reason for this arrow to be all the way on the top. I can bring it down to the bottom, put it somewhere where it's really convenient for people to reach. I might put it in the center or put it here. To be honest, that's probably the best and easiest access. So if I now test this out on my screen, let me just click on here, and then I can click there, and you can imagine that one would be very easy to access. Now you can argue that then the heating option is too far up. So Is it necessary to have them so big as we can see them here? Again, that's why you have your phone connected and you test directly, immediately, all the interactions, because you can then tell whether they are big or small. And if I can make it smaller, then great. So I can actually now ungroup them. I don't need them to be a group anymore. And I can make them small, and I can immediately test what's the smallest size that's still convenient to tap on. But that way, I can have them further down here. And to fill up the space, I can always put something there on the top. Maybe I can just put features with another color like that. Okay, so again, always think about how the user will interact with it and make sure it's as convenient as possible, and at the same time, obviously, to make it look good. We almost covered everything you need to know about Adobe XD. So there's not much else you need to know. So this simple thing, what we set up so far, already showed you how to bring in things you prepared in other apps, like Illustrator, how to set up simple interactions, how to think about the user's way of interacting with these elements, set up the transitions, and make changes to the colors. So there's only one other thing that I would like to mention, and that is, for example, using the back arrow. If that is something you would use on multiple screens, you would want that to be saved as a symbol. Now that's the other panel we haven't used so far here, where we can save it as a symbol. So I selected it, and now if I want to save it as a symbol, I just click on the plus sign here. There you go, it's saved. Now why is that useful? Let's just create another page or another screen. So I'm just going to click here, and I'm going to call this one heating. First of all, let's just put the icon in because we'll definitely need that. By the way, that could already be a symbol as well, but in this case, I'm just going to put it in as a simple image. But we will have the same arrow, the back arrow. Again, if I want to put it in exactly the same position, instead of Alt click and dragging, select it, press Control C, or Command C, click on the other artboard and press Control V or Command V. It remembers the position automatically. It's like paste in place in InDesign. So just Control C, Control V, and all you have to do is to select the other artboard when you want to paste it in. It puts it exactly in the same position. But when I switch to prototype mode, this obviously won't have the same interaction. So interactions are not copied. Just simply the image is copied, while this one has a go back option to the first screen. This doesn't have anything yet, so I just have to make sure it goes back in here, and it can use the slide right option. And then if I select the heating option up there, I can drag that onto this side, and I can say slide left, because the heating will slide left. So that's it. Let's test it out. Explore features, heating, and then going back. How cool is that? Only advantage of setting up a symbol is that if I decide that I want actually, although it's orange is the color I chose for interactions, but if this maybe needs to change in color, what I can do is to go back to design mode, double click on that symbol, change the fill color to maybe blue, and see it updates immediately on the other one as well, because they are instances of the same symbol. So yeah, so you edit the source by double clicking on it, and then it updates throughout the whole app. So for something like that you want to keep consistent, make sure it's saved as a symbol before you start putting into multiple screens. So I recommend this to be done in a way that if you see yourself using an element at least twice in the same way, and it's showing up either on the same screen or multiple screens, before you go any further ahead, already save it as a symbol and keep using it that way, because that way you can update it all. But what if you want to detach one of these from the symbol itself? So let's say this, I want to keep blue and I don't want it to update. If you right click on it, you can just simply choose ungroup symbols. So that would still keep all the other instances connected, but this one will be independent from the rest. So even if it was set up as a symbol in the beginning, it can still be delinked or detached from the other ones. So let's say I want to add some text here. I could use the type tool, create a text frame, and I could just add the type in there. But I have an actual copy here. Let me just open that copy up. So I can copy in, what was it? I think I called it comfort, the temperature, yes. So comfort, if I copy that in, yeah, it's important when you use the type tool and you don't put anything in, it actually removes the text frame. It doesn't keep it there. It's a good thing because you don't end up having unnecessary blank text frame hanging around, like in InDesign, it can happen often. Here it's quite strict. If you don't put text in it, it just removes it. So I have the text in there. I can obviously have styles as well. Maybe that's something I can show you because styles are, again, big time savers. So you can see up here on the left, we have character styles. So let's say I want to use the same font, DIN 2014, but this time I want to use it with bold. So that will be one character style. It's not called paragraph style like in InDesign. Here they call it character style. And then I will select this one and then set it to DIN, the same font. And I set it, regular is good. And I'm going to set it to center aligned is fine. And then maybe add just one empty space. Actually, it's fine the way it is. Maybe this one I'm going to use without color, the orange. And that one is good in gray. So if I want to use the same two formatting, the heading and the paragraph or the copy, I would select it and go to character styles and click on plus and see how quick that was. I think it's actually better than in any of the other Adobe applications. So like in InDesign, Illustrator and Photoshop, when you save a style, it gives you a dialog box and it asks you to give it a name, which is great. But once you save it, apart from the name of your style, you don't actually see any feedback of how it looks. While here immediately I can see the font, I can see whether it's bold or not, and I can see the size. I see everything that I need to know, all the attributes of it. So I don't actually need to call it anything like heading, because I look at it and I know that's the heading I used. So if I select my body copy and I click on here on plus, I will be able to tell straight away that that's the one that I use for the paragraph. So that's all I needed. Now let's see how quickly I can create my second screen, which looks very similar to this one. I would be able to copy it, but that's cheating. So I'm just going to set up a new artboard, okay, like this. So let's say I want to use the same back arrow. We know that already. Copy, paste, done. So if I select that first one, that's back, and then I select that part, and that's back. All right, so that works as we expected it. And if I want to make sure it stays in the same place, I just have to drag it in the center. It aligns itself. If I want to use an icon in the same place and same size, I copy paste. Important, you have to have it selected first, so that way you can replace it like so. Done. So now we have this set up. Let's set up the interaction as well. Control tab to switch to prototype mode. I select the privacy option, which we need to go there. That's slide right. And then, no, slide left. It was actually fine. No, that way we're going from there, slide left, yes. It always tricks me, these things. If I go back there, then the feature screen will need to slide right, I think. But let's just have a look. So if I test this, if I click on privacy, yeah, going back should go left. Yes, that's good. Heating, perfect, perfect. Maybe comfort can be renamed to heating just to keep, actually we can change it here. Comfort is probably a little bit neater word to use. Cool. So once again, testing, comfort, done, going back, privacy, done. But before we finish, there's one important thing. I have like 5 minutes left. How do we share this with our client? What you need to do is to click on the share option here on the top right corner, share online, and you just need to give it a name. So let's just call this Sweet Home. All right. Then you can drag a file in here, which will be the icon used to represent this project. So I have that icon, this PNG. So if I drag and drop it there, you can see it's already saved. So that's like a thumbnail for the project. And then all I have to decide is whether I want to allow comments or not. So if I allow comments, the client will be able to give me feedback. Of course, you want to do that. And you will see how cool it is once feedbacks come in. And then all I have to do here is to click on Create Link. What happens is that this project will be stored on Creative Cloud, on Adobe server, so you don't have to have a server for this, and the client don't have to have a Creative Cloud account. So they can just get the link and they will be able to give feedback and even try it out, the working prototype that you created. Adobe XD is not supposed to be used for the whole process. So for refining the app and obviously do the development, that's the next stage. But it's a rapid prototyping app. It's really about quickly capturing the idea, giving something visual, something tangible that can be already used to see, okay, how this can work. And I can show it to you here if I use the same link. If this is accessed on a desktop computer, that's how it will come up. So it shows that there's 4 screens created, and this is the home screen. And I can click on it and test it out within the browser. So if anyone is on a laptop, would be able to add the comment to it. And let's say I'm going to represent you as the client, and I'm going to say main screen icon is pixelated. And look at this. There is an option to pin to the artboard. So if the client is saying this comment, can say that this is the issue that we are having. So me as the designer, when I look at it, I would get a notification through my Creative Cloud app that I got a response on one of my prototypes. So I can see that someone commented and number 1 is number 1 there. So I know exactly where it is. So I can reply to that and so on and so forth. I even have an option that I can say that's being resolved. So that's quite cool that once it's resolved, it's removed, but I can still go back and see what are the resolved changes that I went through. It's not a lot of functionality for the review process, but it's still a very fast and streamlined way of getting through everything. The other thing you can do, if you want to export your assets, so let's say you want this whole thing, let's say, to be exported as a PNG, whatever you select here, if you go to File, Export, it will save that to whatever option you want, PNG, SVG, PDF even. If I choose SVG, you have additional options. But if I choose PNG, I can choose web, iOS, Android, and you see it automatically will save multiple sizes as well. If you have nothing selected, so if you don't have the selection like this, if you just click on the artboard, then it saves the whole artboard. If you make a selection, then it will save it with transparency only whatever you selected. And just to show you guys, if I want to update anything, let's say I was told that the background color of the home screen is not good, just to show how quickly I can update the prototype, and you can test it out on the same link that you used or that you had. So if I update, let's say, just something simple as the background color here, I select the artboard and I change the background color to maybe brown or white. Let's say we changed it to white. If I go up to share, notice how it now gives me the option to share again, to update or create a new link. So if we wanted to share it as a new project, then the new link is the option you need. If you want to update the current project, just click on update link. And is there anyone still having the prototype open? Well, just wait for it to update here. If you refresh, let me know if you see the white background on it. Oh, there you go. Can you just show it up to the others? There you go. That's how quick it was. And there's an option to manage your links as well, so you can keep track of all your live prototypes that you are sharing with people. And by the way, you can put your finished prototypes into Behance using the embed option, because it can create an embed code that you can put either on Behance or even on your website, in a WordPress site. So that means within a post, for example, you could have the full working prototype shown, which people can interact with. So if you ever need to have more space, select the artboard you wish to make changes to and simply drag it down. Now notice what happens is that it shows a little dash line there, which means that's the actual size of the screen of the device. But anything I place underneath it, let's say I put this same image in there again, just as an example, will show up as a scrollable part of that screen. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found this useful. And yeah, you learned a new application in half an hour. Thank you. Cheers. Thanks a lot for staying till the end. I hope you found this video useful. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, as I'm adding similar content regularly. If you are interested in learning more from me, you should probably check out my comprehensive training courses on my site. I have more than 200 hours of video training from beginner to expert levels, with lots of exercises, quizzes, and resources to help you develop your skills and become a professional designer. Just click on this link and create an account to start your free trial. Thanks again for joining me today, and I hope to see you in the next one.